Real life.
Superpowers.
And they were 98% of our revenue, which was another interesting learning. Don't have a single customer doing 98% of your revenue.
Learn that lesson the hard way.
Yeah, somehow you always have that level of risk, whether it's a single traffic source, it's a single platform, mobile platform that you are relying on, it's a single customer. You always have to think, how do I de-risk this thing?
Hello. In this episode, we speak with Massimo Chieruzzi. He's the GM and co-founder at AdEspresso, which is a tool for SMBs to manage, analyze, and optimize Facebook ads, and which was acquired by Hootsuite in 2017. He's a multi-hyphen dude. He's been a radio speaker, journalist, developer, marketer, entrepreneur, and angel investor. At 14 years old, he was the youngest Italian guy indicted in cybercrime for running a pirate BBS and making countless intercontinental calls with his modem to avoid paying the bills through boxing. He later founded Creative Web, the leading web development agency in Italy and biggest provider in Europe for eBay and other companies. He founded AdEspresso after getting fed up with Facebook ad scaling and optimizing solutions. In the early days of AdEspresso, Massimo helped scale the blog from 0 to 700,000 visits per month and build a profitable business with just inbound marketing and 0 people on sales, making AdEspresso the most used Facebook ads product worldwide.
Real life.
Superpowers.
Up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology.
It's alive!
Real life.
Superpowers.
Welcome to Real Life Superpowers.
Thank you.
Where are you these days?
I'm in Milan, and actually, with COVID, I've been here for the last 4 months, actually, here in my home. But overall, I spent 4 years in San Francisco but then I moved back to Milan. I enjoy the most living here.
Yes, I agree. I love Milan as well.
Where are you based?
In Tel Aviv, Israel.
I've never been there, but everyone tells me it's an amazing place. I hear a lot of people that want to move there from Milan.
Yeah? Well, these days they probably do more than any time.
Yeah, but I've been hearing that for a very long time.
Okay.
Beautiful, better weather, very active startup ecosystem, probably way more active than Milan. I should come visit one day.
Yeah, you're welcome. We'll have some interview in the studio.
Nice.
So, you have a pretty wild story.
Kinda. I mean, it's a nice story, but overall, I think it's very similar to everyone that did this journey and was successful at it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's a modest way of putting it. But I feel like we should probably maybe zoom out and sort of start from the beginning, because you started very young. So you had an entrepreneurial spirit from as a child, right? How does this start? Were your parents entrepreneurs?
No, my parents were not entrepreneurs. Actually, my father was a doctor and my mother was a teacher. But actually, I was more of a nerd than an entrepreneur. So I started working with computers when I was 8-year-old. By 14-year-old, I was the youngest indicted in Italy for cyber crimes. So BBS with pirated software, AT&T calling card to make intercontinental calls for free. And it all started from there. And
we're not going to skip over that story. So you were 14 and you were indicted for cyber crimes. How did that go down at home?
It was kind of okay. I think my mother kind of wanted to kill me. My father has always been pretty British aplomb in this situation, luckily. But it turned out fine. I mean, I was underage and it was the first big case, big crackdown against hackers. So there were really no legislation. So they didn't do anything. I just had all my computer sized for a bunch of years. I mean, it was okay. I was just using school's computer to do my stuff instead of at home. But it it was fine. In the end, it was just a slap on the ends.
And like, were you sort of famous, notorious in Italy, like all across the newspapers, the 14-year-old hacker?
No. It was, they didn't release the name, so it was fine. I mean, there was a lot of publicity on this crackdown, but back then it was like 1994. It was not even mainstream. People didn't know what we were talking about, so it didn't get a lot of publicity or public eye scrutiny. It was fairly under the radar, luckily.
And so this didn't sort of set you back or scare you or any way. You just kept going.
No, actually, I kept going. And back when I was 14, it was really just pirate software. Then when I grew older, I got involved in the hacker scene, doing kind of more illegal stuff. But luckily, I didn't get caught the second time around. And then when I was 18, I just moved to Milan to do the university. But, it was 2000. There was like the dot-com bubble. Seemed like everyone was getting rich. And accidentally, I started working as a journalist, as a tech journalist, which was a lot of fun, like a lot of like free trips, free travel. Companies had a lot of money to waste back then. And I was following a bunch of like big blogs. They were not called blogs back then, but like a couple of big portals in nerd news in US, which I liked. They wanted to build one in Italy. And that's where it started. I mean, I started asking around. I just wanted some free hosting because I couldn't afford one. And people back then were just crazy, like, no, okay, let's raise €1 million and make this the next big thing. But I was 18. I didn't feel like raising money or doing things with someone else's money. So I just started my small web agency firm, which started to build this portal, which we built. But we quickly realized that it was a bubble. Everyone was exchanging services, advertising, but no one was pouring money in it. So to pay the bill, we started working as a web agency. And I really had no idea what the fuck I was doing. I had no experience, no idea how to run the company. Probably for 4 years, I was paying payroll out of credit card because we didn't have money in the bank. But then slowly it started picking up. We started working with a bank, which was a lot of money. Completely accidentally, we started working with eBay, and we became the biggest service provider of eBay in Europe, basically.
You were a student?
No, I dropped off university fairly quickly. When I was 20, I dropped off university to pursue the web agency.
What did you go to study?
Economy, which I was not really passionate about. But here in Italy, engineering had the first couple of years, which were standard for everyone. So there was like a lot of math, physics, chemistry, and this kind of stuff. And I was never good at studying stuff that I didn't care about. So I knew that I would have never make it in engineering, while in economy, I could just like talk, invent stuff, and get out of most of the exams. So it was a safer bet, but still after a couple of years, I got boring. I was working as a journalist. I had the agency, and I just dropped off at some point.
I'm interested in studying because there's two things that you're also like the journalist, but also you did something at the age of 14. And there's something in entrepreneur that was spoken. It's called subjective justice, which means that to disrupt the market or to do something as an entrepreneur, the economics is if you're making money, you're actually taking it for someone else. Or if you're doing something bad, you also know how to do something good. And it's the way you put on the glasses, like the glasses is how you see what is right and wrong. And you actually choose for other people, like the example of your 14-year-old, which is inspirational in one sense. And in the other sense, it has like, it's a no. And now if you ask me objectively as an entrepreneur, I'd say and this is what's interesting. You have a dad that's a doctor, and he said, amazing, you hacked the system and disrupted it. You have a mom that's a teacher that says, okay, but you're not allowed to do that, right? Which I understand. But this is something an entrepreneur has to do every day, because if you want to win in the competition, you have to find different loopholes, we'll call it, hacks. So I'm interested in that kind of thought, because I'm sure as an adult today, you can see something in different perspectives. But at the same time, I'm sure, and I'm saying this about myself as well, right? I regret the way he did it. So, like, what do you think about the concept as an entrepreneur?
I think the concept makes a lot of sense. When I was 14 years old, probably I was not introspecting or thinking about it with that lens. It was just, I want free games and I don't care. It's not even, on the piracy, software piracy side of things. I mean, I think a lot of, very often it falls in two buckets. It's not that people want to do illegal things. People just want to do some things. And if it's not possible, they will just not care about. And back then it was not even about like not paying for the games. It was more about these games are in US and I don't have access to them, so I'll just download them. Or later on, I want access to internet, but there is no internet in Italy, so I'll just use calling AT&T calling card. And this happens over and over again. I mean, even in more recent year, if you think about it, a lot of people were pirating movies. That was kind of a big thing, like Napster, etc. But it was just getting access to what you want. I mean, I didn't care about paying $5, $10 for a movie. It was just not possible then. When Spotify, Apple Music, Netflix arrived, and that's it. I don't know, because I'm no longer involved in it, but I don't think, I think that the piracy market for movies, music really shrink, because it's a pain in the ass to find the torrent, to download it, to move the files, to catalog them, etc. If you can pay $5 per month to just get access to all of it without the hassle of looking for them, that's just fine. And I think that applies to everything. When you're building a business, most of the time you are solving your own problem. So as you're building it, at least for me, I was not even thinking about what are the rules, etc. I was just building a solution for myself. And from that perspective, I was not caring that much about the rules, because I was not thinking at the business side of things. So I was just thinking, okay, let's do it, and no one will care if it's just for me. And then at some point you say, okay, this could be a business, and you start thinking, okay, how do I scale it? Can I do it, etc. And probably the good things about startup is that when you are smaller, even for some problems are perceived as huge problem, the reality is that if you are small, it's a small problem most of the time, unless you're doing something drastically illegal, like a PR scandal. I mean, it's a huge problem if you are Oracle, if you are Microsoft. But if you are a small startup, you made a mistake, usually you get a second try. It's not like you are gonna be dead because you mismanage the record of your user when you only had 10 users. So, I mean, now probably I'm thinking it with a different, at this thing with a different eye. So I'm always trying to find solution to a problem. And probably in the first iteration, I care more about can I solve the problem rather than what are the rules. But now I'm much more aware of the issue that I will have as we scale, etc. So from the get-go, I always try to involve legals and get a good understanding of what will be the limitation, what would be the the problem as we scale it. But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's also not from a legal standpoint, but what Steve Jobs was doing with Apple. He just wanted something and he didn't care about probably not legal limitation, more like product technology limitation, and he wanted to achieve it. And that's probably, what drives most entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I'll tell you differently. I think that if that experience gave you the guts, now solving things that are, that you want to solve and you're not, but it gave you the guts because you understand that it's a little more bendy, and I'm saying this in a very good way. Again, I'm with you here, right? I can say that out transparently. You cannot, I couldn't see a way to succeed if you're trying to solve problems because all of the rules are against those problems, and you need to be, I'll say this, either a little bit stupid, okay, and not know everything you know, or innocent, which is great, and playful, okay, and less regulated. And if it's totally regulated, you have no freedom, okay, and then it's going to be hard to do that. So and that's why I'm saying on the entrepreneur side, this is something that really interests in you. So now, if you have kids, would you tell them, listen, where on the scale is the justice, because it's just between it, because you want them to be playful. You want them to, but you don't want them to, there's a difference. One entrepreneur always told me, listen, I do not lie, I exaggerate. Okay. And now that's the difference. Okay. So, he could say, listen, you said users, right? So I have hundreds and thousands of users, but he had more like 202,000, and he had made the feeling that he had 700.
Of course.
Now, that's why I'm saying it's there because there's no lie there, right? But there is that, and that's exactly the bendy point. And then you want to give the person, now you want to inspire your kids. As an entrepreneur, you want them to be really successful. What do you say?
Sure. No, but makes total sense. I mean, I think the exaggeration is something that no one admits, but it's part of every startup life. Because when you're small, especially if you work on the enterprise space, you need some kind of validation, social proof. Otherwise, the big enterprises won't pick you. And you bend a bit the perception of reality, whether it's hundreds of thousands of users, while it's 100,001.
And the big ones don't?
Yeah. Or what's the concept of user? Is someone that is using the product? Is everyone that ever left me an email and started a trial over the last 10 years? That's something that everyone does. And I mean, you need to be smart about it, because sometimes you just look stupid. You can see the startups that are like two weeks in the product and they boost hundreds of thousands of users, which is not realistic. But otherwise, I think it's everyone does it, and I think the users are also smart enough to know that all those big company logos in their own page are probably people that tried the product for a week, dropped off, but still they are in the database. So you have Microsoft as a customer in your own page.
I think it's also a question of sort of legal philosophy and sort of personal boundaries, and that are pretty much subjective. And that a company or a startup is probably a group of people that hopefully are aligned around the same values. So you sort of set your own boundaries and you see what makes sense to you. From a different example, I would say when you study law, I studied law, and they talk about legal philosophy. So, if you're in the middle of nowhere and there's a red light, do you cross it, or do you wait because that's the law? And I think 100% of entrepreneurs that you ask will answer the same, right?
No, I'll tell you
they're
why.
Not going to pass?
No, I'll tell you why, because this is my feeling. Okay, most entrepreneurs that I meet, they're a lot more, we'll call them geeky and safe. Most of the successful ones aren't gamblers. Okay?
Aren't gamblers.
No, they're not gamblers.
Right.
But what they do is, they bend, and this is a problem what I'm saying, because bending subjectively in law, it's binary, right? It's bad and you're evil. Okay, so what I'm saying is it depends on the perspective. But they bend that. So I'm going to talk about the same thing you said, but it's a yellow light. If it's a yellow light and it can be perceived as red or green, now the optimists, which he is an optimist because he said, I solve problems. My problem is I'm in a rush. I have to get to a meeting. It's yellow. I can do it. Okay. If it's a full stop red, and that's why he said when I was solving a problem, in my opinion, he said a 14-year-old, I was just trying to play a game. It's a yellow light, right? If they would have said to you, listen, this is illegal, you're going to jail, it's not like that was the incentive. It's a yellow light.
But that's also philosophy, because that red light, what does it mean? Where nobody can see you passing and nobody can get hurt. So
Do you know all this information?
Yes.
I know. We pass.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, of course.
no, but if you're by the book,
Sorry, I'm like you now. Yes, we would pass.
me and Massimo.
Would you pass?
I mean, if you know that there's a red light, middle of nowhere, you know that you can
I would totally pass.
totally pass. And I think 100% entrepreneurs would. And I think people who are more conservative are just going to stand there, even if it's going to be a day. And they're just going to call somebody and say, I think there could be a problem. I'm stuck here. I've been sleeping.
Not in the drivers in Italy. The drivers in Italy, they pass.
Yeah, it's also probably a cultural thing. I mean, in Italy, everyone would pass, but also in Italy, we don't even have a word for like jaywalking. It's just, I mean, if there are no cars and the light is red, I will just walk the street. But when I tried to do it in Mountain View, where there were probably like 5 cars per hour on the street, and still when I jaywalked, even if it was completely safe, like people were freaking out. Like a car 2 kilometers away from me just like stop in the middle of the street because, oh my God, someone is jaywalking over there. What's happening? They are not following the process. So it's probably very tied to the culture of each country as well.
Yeah. Okay. So circling back to that company, website building company. So you identify, you're a student, you dropped out, you identify a need to build websites, correct?
Yeah.
And then you go for it.
I go for it like 3-4 years, pretty shitty, no idea what we were doing, barely breaking even. And then the bank arrived, which was a big booster in terms of revenue and like learning experience, but still, quite boring, basically consultancy job, not scaling very well. Then eBay arrived, and that was the big change. We switched from like 3 people to 11 people.
What do you mean? They didn't just, knock on your door one day, like?
Kind of, yes. I had a blog about PHP, and they were looking for a PHP agency. So they just sent me an email. I thought it was a joke, actually. And I kind of replied like, yeah, we do PHP. Are you really eBay? And they were. And we started with like a stupid project, which was, people nowadays won't remember about it, but back then there was Dig, which was it was like Reddit today. It was the homepage of the world, and people would just post every kind of article, and if you hit the homepage, you will get hundreds of thousands of visitors in a day. And with eBay, we built basically a Dig clone to publish the craziest thing that were on sale on eBay. And we did it in Italy. It was a huge success. Then we sold it to eBay Australia, US, etc.
What did you sell?
This Dig clone. So initially it was implemented just in eBay Italy, and then we sold it to eBay across the world. And from that perspective, it was kind of eBay bending the rules, because they had this huge like development team in US, which was huge, following all the best practice, but also quite slow. And eBay had given local countries like the permission to make small local projects, but we were way faster than their team in the United States. So they were bending the rule, and under this umbrella of small local project, we started building huge projects. So we built a full real estate vertical for eBay here in Italy, which was actually a section of eBay. And it was really, they were really bending the rules. They had very smart people here in Italy. And when we sold the real estate to eBay friends, it was really a fun period, because in Italy, you didn't get to work with such smart customers that were really like doing user testing, grabbing people on the street, bringing them upstairs just to test the product, split testing buttons, etc. We were developers. We were not business people, so we were having a lot of fun. And then suddenly eBay changed CEO. And the new CEO was really, what is Europe? Why do we have people working in Europe?
When was this? What year?
It was probably, I don't remember exactly. It was when Meg Whitman left. I think we were around 2008, between 2008 and 2010 ballpark. And they were 98% of our revenue, which was another interesting learning. Don't have a single customer doing 98% of your revenue.
Learn that lesson the hard way.
Yeah, somehow you always have that level of risk, whether it's a single traffic source, it's a single platform, mobile platform that you are relying on, it's a single customer. You always have to think, how do I de-risk this thing? Either way, when we started at AdEspresso, everyone was telling us you have a huge risk liability on Facebook. And we were like, yes, we do, like everyone else. Unless you are the platform yourself, one way or the other, you're always relying on someone else's platform to get traffic, to get customer. Then you can find some balancing, but you always have someone that has a disproportionate power over you.
Well, what's interesting about it is it's either being with one client, but let's talk about the digital reality. It's also being one supply chain. Like most of the users, you're going to bring them from Google or from Facebook. Most of 80% of the users.
Exactly.
You're your only client, those platforms, or it's your only supply. Like what you learned and did what? Like, what are you going to do about that?
You always have some level of risk. I mean, one way or the other, you can de-risk a bit, but you'll never get to the perfect point where you have 20% of traffic from Facebook, 20 from Google, 20 from affiliate marketing, 20 from like branding. So you just need to live with it, be aware of it, and know what are the pros, the risk. I think overall it's really a matter of understanding what are the drivers of the people you are relying on. If you have a very good understanding of what's Google end goal, what's Facebook end goal, etc., and you are very aware of it, you still have some level of risk, but you reduce that risk a lot. So if you know that the end goal of Google is to provide the best answer to a question, you can rely on Google as long as you align with them and you are producing content that is the best answer to a question. When you are doing black hat stuff, you are paying for links, you are creating a huge amount of shitty content, then there you really have a risk because you have a single platform that drives you a lot of traffic and you know that your values are not aligned. So at some point, they will come after you. That's what happened to Zynga, for example. I mean, I remember the huge amount of like Farmville notification that you were receiving. And I think Zynga knew that was not aligned with Facebook goal, which was to have a great user experience and have people enjoy Facebook. So that was a huge risk, but a huge risk that you could see coming.
But okay, yes, but again, it's the interest. You're saying great content that answers questions. So there's something I saw not long ago saying Google's going to change their whole dynamics of also becoming Google Home and asking questions to a speaker where there's only one answer. Okay. And then what you're saying is not relevant, like Black Hat is not relevant. You know what I mean? Like the pivot, it means for now, which is correct. Okay. But tomorrow you're going to have to change your whole strategy of content building, which we have to adapt to the new changes that they do. So it's like interests aligned, right?
Yeah, but that's the digital world. I mean, everything is changing constantly. 10 years ago, it was MySpace. Now MySpace doesn't exist. And there are, within the agency, at some point, we started a side project for blogging. And back then, Facebook was a huge driver of traffic because you could pay likes 1 cent. And actually, likes did matter something because you had 20% organic reach. So it was like having a newsletter. But if you understand what drives your partner and you align with it, you are buying time. I mean, you are not buying not having the issue forever, but you are buying time. Because if you are producing great content, yes, you know that Google will change. You know that over time you lose traffic because they'll start providing answers embedded in the results without sending people to your traffic, etc. But you are not risking a crackdown where tomorrow, hey, you broke the rules, you are delisted, your traffic goes to zero immediately. If you align with them, you'll see a decline and you'll react to it. You'll change strategy, you'll change platform, but you are buying yourself a lot of time to fix things. While if you break the rules, if you always look for the shortcut, one, it's terribly like stressful because the shortcut change every day. And two, you run a risk which is too high. It's not high if you are an affiliate marketer living day to day, but if you are building a company with a payroll, with investors and responsibilities to your users, to your investors, to your employees, you cannot be in that risky situation and constantly go after the shortcuts. It's a constant evolution. And then, I mean, again, as we were discussing before on the risk and breaking the rules where you are getting started, it's something, not legal rules, but general acceptable rules. It's fine because the risk for a small startup is acceptable overall, even if things go badly. It is not the end of the world. You can still live with it and have a second chance. As your company get more structure, get bigger, the risk becomes higher and higher. Like Airbnb, when they started, they were leveraging Craigslist, doing scraping, creating fake announces, etc. That's fair. Even if Craigslist saw them and blocked them, that's fine. Those are strategies that are short-lived, but when you are getting started, can give you a terrible boost at the beginning. But then you have to build something that it's predictable. It's a growth engine that will scale, and it's not a continuous source of stress because it could break at any point, and it's built on very fragile fundamentals.
It seems to me like you sort of have a mindset where you're paving a road and you keep evaluating, testing, and then choosing the next steps. And it doesn't seem to me like things are happening randomly. I think you're making calculated decisions, but you're just like not taking them too seriously, knowing that you don't know what the outcome will be, correct?
Yes, of course. And then, the definition of risk and everything changes at every stage of the company. The nice thing of building a startup is that everything is continuously changing. When we started at AdEspresso, we were like, oh my God, our only problem is to raise money. But then we raised money and we understood that we had just created a new set of problems. How do we keep growing to keep our investors happy? So, okay, let's build a bigger product. Okay, now the problem is how do we hire people? So, okay, let's give developers in Italy the same treatment we would offer developers in US, which is what we did. Back then, it seemed crazy. People hated us in Italy because basically we doubled the average payroll for developers here in Italy. And we gave them work from home whenever you want. We gave them bonuses for attending conferences and studying. And with this strategy, in 2 years, we grew from 5 people to 50 people engineering team. And then you created a new set of problem, which is, okay, now we have 50 people reporting into the CTO and the CTO wants to die. So, okay, then we have to build team, we have to build Scrum. And then you create another set of problem. Okay, now people are spending more times in meetings than they are spending building code. So it's always evolving, and that's the same with risk. If we have 100 customers, I don't care about building a multivariate testing to change pricing. It's just small. I can take the risk and I will just change pricing, see what happens and roll back if it doesn't work. But nowadays we have 10,000 customers, so I need to be more careful because a small change could make a huge difference. So I need the multivariate testing. I need to make a safer bet.
You are a problem solver. It sounds to me like this is an attribute that you have, and you also like it, and you like being the person who solves the problem because you're good at it, which is fine. And people approach you and say what to do, and you know how to do it. Now, I'm going to give you a really good riddle right now that's interesting for everybody that's doing business in the world, okay? And as a problem solver, this is something that's really, really interesting. What should you do in the digital industry right now with the biggest problem or the weirdest problem, okay, which is the reality right now with COVID? What would you do right now strategically, you say risk management, low risk, forget about opportunities, which I can understand. Like how to lower the risk. What is smart to do? What are you doing now?
That's a very good question. I think no one really has the answer. So what you do is just you build different scenarios. It's just a reality where you have to accept you have no idea what's going to happen and you prepare for different scenarios. So what we did is just think, okay, what are the scenarios that could happen? A scenario is what I would say we kind of are right now. So it's 3 months, 4 months stop, and then things get better. Another scenario, which is what actually happening to a lot of startups, is that things are getting better. There was like a very bad month, which was March, and then things actually accelerated in the digital world. And then there is a third scenario, which is what I find more realistic, which is this is just the beginning, is not the end. And actually, no one has yet seen the economical crisis that this will generate, which will only appear in November, October, if there is a second phase. But even if there is no second phase, right now, government are pouring a lot of money in the economy, but that will stop at some point. And there will be a crunch in private people spending, which will then create a ripple effect all across the board. So you just create scenarios and play with the numbers and say, okay, if this happens, this is how we react. We will need to shrink the team, for example. Or if this happens, it creates a huge opportunity. And actually, I'm very bad at this. I'm completely dysfunctional. So I think what was the thing that made successful AdEspresso was me working together with Armando, my other co-founder, because we are completely complementary. Like I'm pessimistic, he's more optimistic. I'm like getting a lot of idea, but then hating the execution, the operational part. He is more in like dissecting the good from bad idea from the good idea, and he's totally into operation. Okay, how do we make this happen? Which I suck at.
How did you meet him?
Randomly in Dublin at the Dublin Web Summit. Now just Web Summit. I was doing AdEspresso, he was doing another startup. We met, and then he joined as an advisor, then as an investor, and then as a co-founder. But I think that's really the most important thing to be successful in a startup, but in everything, is just to know what your weaknesses are and be extremely aware of it. I hate people that are black and white. Like, this is the way to do it. Like, I cannot, that's probably my personal thing. I cannot stand the base camp Twitter feed. I mean, this guy, Jason Fried, and the other co-founder, they're super smart, but they are black and white. Like, this is the way you have to do it. Like remote working or product or like venture capital, they are super opinionated, which is good. And actually from a marketing standpoint works very well in today's environment, which is all about, extremizing, putting everything to the extreme, like Donald Trump. I mean, it's like creating an enemy, really creating a tribe of people. It works, but the reality is that there is no single path to get to a destination. You can raise money and deal with investor. You can bootstrap your company. You can have a remote team, or you can have a super nice office and keep everything together, everyone together. There are hundreds of different ways and paths that you can take to get to the same destination. There are also hundreds of different definitions of success, which is extremely personal. But I think the important thing is to understand what are your weaknesses.
When do you feel that you sort of started to understand yours?
You are constantly understanding yours. I think with the agency, I started to understand my weaknesses, and it's a continuous process where I'm always refining it. Once you understand them, you have three options. I mean, either you improve yourself, which is something that you should always do, but I don't think you can fix your fundamental character. If you are an introvert, you can fake it, but you will still be an introvert. You can find someone else that complements you, or you can just define your path based on your strength, avoiding your weaknesses.
You knew the weaknesses, but when was the point where you felt comfortable with the weaknesses? Like there's probably a point where you felt comfortable telling people and communicating that that's something that you don't want to do, and you know that they have to understand it or want to understand it or can understand it.
It takes time, and actually I don't think there was a precise moment in time. I just think it's something where, like if you have, a hearing or seeing dysfunction, the brain automatically adapt and make the other senses stronger. Or like if you have a eye problem, over time the brain correct how it process images and you don't realize you have it. I have no problem talking about my weaknesses, but it's not even something I do very often or I have a process. I think my brain just automatically corrects the route. Like I'm not good at selling product, or maybe I'm good at it, but I suck at searching customers. So what I did was, okay, with the agency, I'm not good. I'm not able to pick the phone and call random people and tell them, hey, do you need a website? So automatically I steer course and I just said, okay, there are 2,000 agencies that are doing websites. What can we do? Let's just become the best R code developers that only focus on like huge portal, huge problem that are very difficult to build. And there are just 5 companies. So if we become the best at that, customer will come our way. They will come looking for us because they know that we have worked for banks, for eBay, for that kind of big projects. And the same happened for AdEspresso. Usually when a new industry arises, like Facebook advertising, everyone goes after the enterprise because it's predictable. You hire people, you sell to the large enterprises. It's usually the first entry when a market is created. But I knew that I hate building a sales team. I'm not capable of doing it. What I'm good at is writing content, ranking them on Google. So let's do a self-service business because that's what we know how to do extremely well. And option 2 is, of course, finding someone which complements you, which is meeting Armando and realizing that even if sometime we would fight, it was better to take the journey together.
So there's 2 lessons here, I think, or insights. I think one, when you say you self-correct as the brain, and you're given the example of, for example, if you're not seeing well, I would say that there's 2 ways to self-correct here, and they're not internal. So one is to find somebody who completes you and self-correct through that. And 2 is to see how you can overcome something by sort of pivoting to a strength and seeing how you can double down on the strength.
Yeah.
And I think that the third option, which you didn't mention, is actually to freeze and not do it. And I think that's something that a lot of people might do. So I think understanding that either doubling down on a strength is actually fantastic because you don't have to be good at everything. And actually maybe doing that downing is going to take you very far, or finding somebody that completes you, or better yet, doing both. That could actually make you a superstar. And
totally.
And freezing is just so dangerous in those situations because sometimes actually not being good enough is the exact motivation to become great, but in a different form.
Absolutely. And I think that trying to be good at everything is, not to under very important importance of continuously improving yourself. I read tons of books on how to be a better salespeople, how to become an extrovert. It's nice. I can talk for hours about it, but didn't really work. But I think that trying to be good at everything is as risky as freezing very often. I see a lot of startups that are just obsessed with, okay, I need to be good at paid. I need to be good at affiliate. I'm like, yeah, but you are making a shitload of money with organic. Why don't you double down on that and focus 80% of your energy while exploring other opportunities, of course? But you have one thing that is working. First, double down on that and grow your company while searching for other opportunities. But don't say that Facebook is as important as Google in terms of resource allocation when Google is bringing you 80% of traffic and it has not plateaued yet. When it plateaus, when you cannot bring any more traffic, then of course you should allocate 80% of your resources to finding something else. But that's what happened to AdEspresso with Facebook. Everyone was telling us, hey, do Google, do Twitter advertising, do all of this stuff. And we were like, we are doubling month over month with Facebook. And if we build Google right now, it will slow down the growth on Facebook for something that is totally uncertain. So we are not going to do it right now. We'll do it, but we'll do it at the right time.
I mean, for sure, I agree. I think that you have to focus and you have to understand where your strength is and see how you can leverage. But I think, like, from a psychological perspective, there's some danger in not doing things out of fear. So there's a difference between saying I have a weakness and I have to see how I compensate for it versus having a fear and not doing something for the sheer reason of being fearful. So, you know, like they say that the people who are most creative are the people who have stage, which is like so many people like share that fright, but people who have stage fright will find the most amazing creative ways to avoid being on stage to the extent that, you know, like great ideas come out of it because sort of creative alternatives result. But it's dangerous because maybe if that person sort of just faced the fear, then something good would come out of it. So you have to be very self-critical and to know, is this fear that's making me freeze, or am I really just with facing a personal weakness that is what it is? And no matter how much I try, I'm not really going to be able to improve here. And when that's the case, then I think I should compensate, not even compensate, but I should solve it, you know, talking to you as a problem solver. You know, things are figure outable. It's just a matter of framing them and understanding what the real reason is for not doing them. And when the real reason is something that just sort of gives reason to solve, you can really, really get to the next level of stretch your ability and performance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree there. It's not, you should not avoid doing things out of fear. You should be open-minded and testing. And then once you have tested them, realize, okay, this works for me, this doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, then you take one of the two free paths that we have just discussed. For example, I had a terrible stage fear because of my bad English, Italian accent, and I was just scared to talk in front of people. But then I did it 3 times, 4 times. I saw that actually people found the Italian accent funny. So I started making jokes on my Italian accent as soon as I jump on stage. And then I realized that was a skill that I could learn, and that most of the time it was not just being a brilliant entertainer, which of course then can make a huge gap, which I will never do probably, but that's fine. I don't need to be a great entertainer, but I realized that it's just a matter of practice. And if you go on stage and you have to think what I have to say next, you'll just sucks. If you have repeated your talk 100 times, you will just be great because you automatically know what to do. With AdEspresso, we were running the same onboarding webinar every Wednesday. And I was doing it because I wanted to listen feedback from customers. And I think like after 3 years, I was really like sending email, drinking coffee and smoking while doing the webinar because I was just going in autopilot.
Yeah, and imagine if you gave up on that, if you let the fear manage you.
Yeah.
And it's always balanced because I imagine like while thinking about ways to avoid it, maybe one way that you would think was, okay, I don't want to step on a stage, so I'm going to write a lot of content. And then you could build an empire of an inbound marketing. But maybe it's enough to say, okay, I got to work on my stage fright. I got to get up on that stage. But hey, I just thought of something creative that I should do regardless. I should also create content. You know, I think it's always a matter of having that compass and understanding where you're at your best and stretching it and just not being at your comfort zone. But as you said, also knowing, okay, here's a hard stop. Here's where there's a sheer weakness. There's a person who can do this much better than me. And I can't let ego be in the way. I'm going to let that person be there instead of me.
Absolutely.
And what would you say are superpowers?
I don't know for sure what are my superpowers. I think I'm good at finding creative solutions when I find the problem, like workarounds. Um, I'm very good at it. Like when we started at Espresso, I was like, okay, we need an English speaker, but how do we find an English speaker in Milan? Because they were not searching for a job. They were either students or people that moved for their own company. So what I did was, okay, student is the way to go. How do we get them? And I just published a real estate ad for like, okay, I want to improve my skill and I'm renting my English skill and I'm renting an apartment for a room for $100, but just to an American student. And I would get a lot of people that was interested in the room and they were all American. And I was like, I'm sorry, I gave up the room just yesterday. But by the way, I have a friend who's looking for a content writer here in Milan who's a native speaker. Would you be interested in it? And that's how we found our first content writers in Milan. So these kind of things, I think I'm really good. And I'm really good at building teams, in understanding what people are great and can really shine in the company, and what people are not good, which is not an absolute not good. They might be not good for our company culture, or they might not be good yet, but they might become good later.
And kryptonite?
Process. I suck at building processes. Like, I mean, in the core, I'm still a developer, and like most of the developer, it's the 80-20 rules. Like they like the first 80% of writing the code, which is like the part where you're really building something. But then I hate the last 20%, which takes 80% of the time, which is refining it, squashing bugs, writing the documentation, and that final part. So like the process part, I know I suck at it. You saw the time I took to answer your email first time around. I get lost in too many ideas, and then it's always very tough. Like if it was for me, I didn't have Armando, I would start implementing 20 different ideas and not bring down to earth any of them, because I will just stop at 80% to pursue the next idea I had yesterday.
I have to say something. I found your trick, I think. I think you have like technology in your glasses. I explain what I mean. I think that if I would have to say just from this conversation, what your superpower is there's two things that you said that I heard. I heard like that, and I felt. One was you didn't like people telling you that there's only one way to do things. And the frustration is that you think that there's many ways to solve a problem. And I think that those glasses that you're wearing, you put them down, and what you're filtering is you're trying to understand, like if you're looking for a person and the person's in front of me, there's two ways to look at him, about what's bad in him and what's good in him, which is right for everybody. And you said that I know how to build teams and I know how to creative solutions is to take what's good and to solve for yourself, for other people, and for the business, where other people are looking how to say what the problem is. You're searching all the time for the solution. And I think that like when you say that, that's the same thing with processes. I don't know, I'm guessing here, but the process is a big problem, right? So you're always and then this and then this and it you know, those, you have to take off the glasses and then you don't see as well. So
yeah,
I'm guessing that's you're that guy. So I don't know what's pessimistic about your partner saying about you, but that's what you're looking at.
No. I'm absolutely the pessimistic. I mean, when we do the scenario, I'm always the one building the pessimistic scenario. Is the one building the. Then for sure, I mean, deep inside, I'm an optimistic, because no one that is a pessimist will probably start a company. Because I mean, the risks are always higher. No, not higher, but for sure, when we get started, it's easier to see the risk than the positive outcome. But yeah.
Yeah, we didn't buy that.
Yeah, we didn't buy that. Like I didn't.
I'm kinda am. And then I think the other, since we are nearly at time, I think everyone that wants to start a company should read, I always recommend this book, should read Lost and Founder by Aaron Fishkin. I think that's the most realistic description of how it is to build a company.
Yeah.
And one thing that I find very true there is that usually when you start a company to solve a problem, but also with a dumb assumption and false assumption that you are going to be the CEO and you are going to do what you love, which is something that Rance described very well in the book. Like I want to launch this product because I want to build the code, or because I want to take care of marketing. And then very soon you realize that you are just the enabler, and that your job is to find a way to solve problem and to enable other people to solve the problem for you. But you, 99% of the time, you are not going to do what you love and what you started the company to do.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a fantastic book. And we had a great conversation with Rand on our podcast, I think, about a year and a half ago.
Rand is, I think, one of the most amazing people in the marketing space, the most down-to-earth, really ready to start everyone.
On it.
Yeah, he's really a good person all around. I really love him.
Yeah, there's actually a friend in Milan called Carlo Seda, which is my friend. And he always says to me, brutal simplicity, right? So Rand is like brutal simplicity. And yeah, that's why we like him.
All right. We want to be respectful of your time. We know you have to dash. So thank you so much for doing this. It was great having you on, and we hope to be in touch.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Stay safe.
Bye.
Real life.
Superpowers.
Up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology.
Real life.
Superpowers.